Hello, my name's Tony Mannion and I'm Sales Development Manager at Solutions PT. And today I'm talking to one of my colleagues, Lee Carter, our Cybersecurity Product Manager.
Afternoon,
Lee.
Tony. Afternoon,
You're
Tony.
right. As you can probably tell, Lee and I are both working from our homes due to COVID-19. And we're fortunate that we're able to do this and still access everything that we require to do our job digitally. But we know that for many of our customers, they're still having to maintain their plant assets to keep our supermarket shelves stocked, heat and light our homes, provide us with clean water, and to ensure that the country's infrastructure remains in place. And we're really grateful for everything that they do. But Lee, in those situations, from the discussions that you've had, how are our customers able to access their plants and assets at this time?
Most, Tony, I think, are using VPNs. Now, that's an extension to their remote access locations. It's a tried and tested technology, and it does offer a good level of protection and usability. There have been some recent security issues with a number of vendors, people like Pulse, Cisco, Palo Alto, Fortinet. So if these are actually unpatched, that could actually be a security risk for them. Others have been forced to adopt something a little bit more quickly. So that might be using some less secure methods, using remote desktop tools, such as TeamViewer or similar. Some may have quickly created 4G connections and added additional access points to the plant, and they've probably done that without fully working through the best practices. One of the big challenges on an OT network is there's very little monitoring which actually goes on. So if it is connected to a public network, it does bring a number of different challenges. And I think as well, there's a few which have simply just not been able to do nothing. And they're struggling now, especially due to some of their staff being in isolation, and it places further strains on their operations.
True, yeah. And I guess if most are using a VPN connection, so or a virtual private network, do our customers then have visibility on what's happening during these connections?
The communications on a VPN, it is actually encrypted from point to point. So unless it's decrypted and monitored at the gateway, then usually no. They can't see what's happening as well on the workstation. So especially in respect to programs that are being used and how the workstation is being interacted with. So, what applications are being used, how the keyboard's being pressed, etc., etc. If there's network monitoring in place, then the customer might have some visibility into the traffic, but broadly a VPN is a dark connection. And there's other risks as well to consider, because effectively when you set up a VPN, you've opened up a connection directly into your OT zone. And potentially that could be from someone's home network as well, especially in these times. That connection as well, that may be shared with others in the house, and they might be running applications or accessing sites that may place the integrity of that home network at risk. And these risks are further if the VPN connection is made actually from a home machine that's shared and it's used by other people within the family. Ideally, devices should be kept separate from these duties as far as possible, and at all times you should always make sure that you've got anti-malware programs which are running and they're in place. We still commonly see VPN connections being directed as well towards the engineering workstations or jump boxes. These are strategic devices and they have connections that are open to sensitive parts of the OT network. If malware is introduced then onto these devices, then it does have the ability to spread very quickly into the operational network.
So you've got to be really careful with these connections. And I guess the other thing that strikes me is whenever I visit a customer's site, there's a number of things that I usually have to do. So normally, if it's the first time, I might be asked to undertake an induction. Often I'll be collected from the gatehouse and I may be escorted while I'm on site. But if you're working remotely with one of these connections, there's probably, well, there are less checks in place. As you've said, there's little monitoring of what's being done, and you're connecting using devices that may not have been properly configured or secured. That must be a big worry.
Uh, that's a really good point, Tony, and it's something that quite often gets overlooked. Not all remote connection methods are equal. Some are just a direct connection, as we see with VPNs, and they can't really take account of operational procedures and processes as if someone was physically on site. Just give me a second, just let me just bring up a quick architecture. Let me just share that. Okay, is that sharing okay, Tony?
Yeah, I've got that in front of me now.
Okay, perfect. So this is a traditional VPN. Oh, sorry, I was on the wrong slide there. So this is a traditional VPN. So once you've actually got a connection, so it comes in through your firewall, that drops straight down. That connects directly onto your SCADA network. Now, generally, as I said, those might be pointed towards an engineering workstation. It's quite common that that's connected on using RDP. But RDP as well can allow the redirection of drives. It can also permit the use of the clipboard. Now, that can be used for copying text, but it can also be used for copying files as well. It's possible to have the drives mapped through, and with all of that, you can have content that is potentially unwanted or unfiltered that might be making its way into the engineering workstation. And it's really difficult from a VPN point of view to put checks and balances on what time a person can actually connect. So if he's pre-authorized, he could connect on at a certain time, but if there's no restrictions whatsoever, he can connect at any time, and it certainly doesn't replicate what you talked about being on site. So once they arrive on the VPN, they're not escorted as they go through. Now, if we have a look at secure remote access, this is a lot similar to how it would be with a physical person who's connected on site. And I'll step up through from the bottom here and work my way up. So the connections themselves, those are originated from the OT zone, and they actually go outbound. So there's no connections that are coming inbounds, they're outbound only. And the assets that you're trying to connect to here, they're configured with pre-configured groups, so you can have control measures that are put into place. So somebody wanting to access this engineering workstation, which is actually over here, they would have to request access before they could be allowed to connect on. Now that might be pre-authorized, so they might have an hour's Windows maintenance that they can connect on and do that. And your connections as well can generally be time limited. You can hide the passwords from the devices, so you don't have to give those out to the third party. And there's some extended benefits as well, because whilst the person's connected on, these sessions can actually be recorded and tied into a ticketing system, or if you've got network monitoring, then they could be tied into certain solutions with there. And this process is a lot more aligned to how it physically would be if you were actually connected on site. A little bit further up, when people try and access initially, they'll be presented with a two-factor authentication challenge, so that's nice and strong. And when they finally connect, they connect to the central site here. And at the central location, that's a presentation layer which creates a protocol break. Files can't be copied through it. Clipboard is allowed, but it only allows text to go through, and that will support the session visibility of SSH, VNC, RDP, and web applications as well. So all of that is built inside of a web portal using a HTML5 web browser such as Chrome. So it's totally clientless for the end user.
So that really does deliver a lot of rigor, and a lot of the rigor that you'd look for when somebody was visiting sites. But if we're talking about an OT environment, Lee, I suppose we better talk about perhaps legacy devices, or those devices that need serial connections, or maybe have a directly connected USB device.
And that is quite common, Tony, actually, and most solutions will actually find this being a bit of a challenge. For a case like this, what I'd recommend is that the device that has these physical connections, that they're created as a protected asset underneath SRA, so you go to those and connect on directly. Where there's customers that have got legacy systems that may be in place, quite commonly we see KVMs and extensions via that. SRA can support VNC as well as web connections, so they can connect directly to those type of solutions. And SRA has a concept of file shares as well, so files can be uploaded to a central repository and they could be made available only once the system has scanned them and they're deemed suitable for use in the OT network. And the last point is probably regarding third parties that require to access PLCs to program them. Now, this is normally by the vendors directly. This is also possible through secure remote access, but it only allows access to that direct PLC and only on the ports that are necessary for the programming to be undertaken. And that really reduces the network's exposure.
I know that we've been delivering secure remote access solutions for a while. And I know that a lot of our customers have been benefiting from the efficiencies that can be gained, as well as the reduction in cost in being able to have somebody work on your systems remotely, the time to fix. There's all sorts of benefits. But I'm very aware at the moment that in these difficult times for our customers, there are certain capabilities that secure remote access solutions can deliver that are becoming increasingly essential to enable them to continue to run their business. We know that customers' businesses are being disrupted, their business systems. We know that they still have budgetary constraints. So at Solutions PT, we've been developing flexible approaches, such as deferring invoicing or offering additional months free of charge subscription, just to help our customers to secure the tools that they require to keep their plants running, but maintaining the security of their OT environment. For information about how we may be able to help your business, please do contact us using the links provided. And most importantly, please stay safe.